G'day Year 7 students, it's Mr. Halstead. In this video, I'm going to be going through our Week 8 practical, Calibrating Catapults. So in this video, you're going to see me talking about some of the materials that you can use, how to set up the catapult, and run you through some of the steps to actually get some measurements as well. Let's get into it. So first off, for our materials, we really just need three main pieces of equipment to get this task done. That's going to be the three parts of our very basic catapult. We need a projectile, an arm, and a fulcrum. So the projectile is the thing that's going to get launched into the air. So really, you're just looking for a small object that will be able to sit on your arm and be able to get launched into the air. So some things that I found in the home, I found a lolly, I found a Lego figure, and I also found an Ushi. They'd all probably be quite easy to use, but any sort of small, dense object that can fly through the air easily would work as well. The next set of equipment is for the arm. So we need something that is flat and long. So some things that I found in my house were some spatulas, or even a ruler would work too. And then we have our fulcrum. This is something that the arm can rotate on. So we put it sort of in the middle of the arm, and that's what's actually going to make the arm turn and launch the projectile into the air. You could use a triangular prism, sort of like the one that's in the diagram. I didn't really find anything in my house that would have been particularly suitable, but I found lots of other cylinders. So I found a toilet roll, a spice jar, a doorstop, a soft drink can, and a whiteboard marker. Now you'll notice that each of these objects are slightly different sizes, depending on how big you make your catapult, or depending on the combination of projectile, arm, and fulcrum you have, you may get some varying results. Some combinations of the three objects might work really well, while others don't work very well at all. So you're just going to have to try and find a combination that works for you. Now, I've also got some extra pieces of equipment to help me through. You'll see me using those in the video in a minute. So a tape measure to measure the distance of all of the launches, some blue tack. They can be used sort of as markers or to hold things down in certain places. And as well, I've got a pencil. I found it easy to mark some locations on objects and stuff like that with a pencil. So I found that this arm, projectile, and fulcrum was probably the best combination that I had to work with. So the first thing that I did was set out a spot for the projectile to sort of exist. I pretty much put it right on the end of the arm. And the only issue that I had, or noticed that I had, was that when I lifted up the spatula, my projectile would slip off. So to make sure that it stayed in the right place, I just put some blue tack on the end. And I didn't push my projectile into the blue tack so that it would get stuck. What I then began to do was mark out 4 different sections on my arm. Notice that I didn't mark any that are on either of the far ends. I kept them in the middle, but each mark is at a slightly different distance compared to where the projectile is. I also used some blue tack to show that you could also use this to mark out each of the parts on your arm. Now, for me, it didn't work particularly well. The blue tack didn't really want to stick on the wood. It may have also been because it was a bit dusty where I was working, so it might have made the blue tack a little bit less sticky, but it's certainly an option that you can try when you're trying to mark things out if pencil's not going to work for you. Look, some other things that you could use, maybe like a sticker or something like that as well, just something to be able to mark each of your parts out. But anyway, I've got my 4 marks. That's all set up and ready to go. What I then did next was measure, using my measuring tape, the distance between where my projectile was sitting and all of the marks. Now, this information needs to get put in my table because this is going to be our independent variable, the thing that's being changed between each test. So from this position, I can mark the distance between each of the pencil marks that I've put down and the location of the projectile, and that can go into my table. Now, the next thing that I need to do is make sure that all of the marks that I have set are actually going to work. Now, the first thing that I've done is I've put a mark down on the floor. That's where the end of my arm is going to sit every time, and that's going to make it easier for me to measure distances later. It's a little bit hard to see from here, but I have lined up one of my marks exactly in the middle of the fulcrum. What I'm then going to do is just flip it, see if it works, setup seems to be holding well. So what I want to be doing next is testing that at each of my settings. So again, just sort of setting up. I noticed as well that on some of my settings, my spatula started to slide. So I put a little bit of blue tack just next to it to sort of hold it in place, test it to see if it would work. That one didn't go so well. Sometimes you'll find that your projectile might just go directly up or might go backwards. It might not launch perfectly well every time. That's okay. Just reset it and try again. So I saw that that worked with the setup that I had. I then reset and did exactly the same test for the second, the third, and the fourth marker that I had on my arm. Now that I know that they all work, I'm going to start doing my first test. So I picked one of my markers, I've set everything up, I've launched it, and at this point I'm getting up to get a tape measure. So from here, what I'm going to be doing is measuring the distance between where the projectile was launched. So I'm going to use that pencil mark that I put down on the ground, on the concrete, and I'm going to be measuring the distance between where the Lego piece landed, my projectile, and where it was launched from, and that can be put into our table as well. Thank you very much, Year 7. I hope that this video helped to show what some of the steps in the method are asking you to do. If you have any questions, by all means, make sure that you send them to your teacher. Until next time, have a good one.